Welcome to the very first episode of OATS Uncut. We are unedited, unfiltered, and uncut. Today I have a very special guest with me, a very young, beautiful, accomplished, articulate, eloquent, ambitious, loving, stylish, diva,
oh my goodness,
businesswoman, Shivangi here, who's made some time to chat with me and give me the honor of the very first episode with her. Thank you, Shivangi, for being here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. It's an honor and a privilege and a long list of adjectives. Oh my goodness.
You're trying to match mine, huh? Anyhow, so Shivangi, today you just graduated business school.
Yep.
And people see you as this very accomplished, very promising young person. Do you see it as, I'm going to literally get to the point, which is, do you see it as a burden that you carry, that people are looking at you and wondering what Shivangi will do next? Or are you just pumped up and you see that in yourself and for yourself?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because I think my view on this has changed a lot in the last 2 years. I think a lot of my early career, it felt very much the former, that what was everyone looking at me to do, and if I could reach that, I was succeeding, and if I wasn't matching that, then I was failing in some way. And so that dictated a lot of how I set up some of my early career moves. And I think in a way that pressure has only sort of increased as I got into business school and have kind of gone through the journey. It's a very public journey to be in business school. And so for me, I'm moving away from the do things out of pressure or out of feeling of obligation or responsibility, more to what do I want to do and how can I create an environment for myself in which I feel empowered to do that. So in some cases, it is maybe not telling people what I'm doing yet and saying I'm leaving things purposely ambiguous or working on some side projects. In other situations, it's leading with the vulnerability and authenticity of, hey, I'm actually deciding to do something a little bit more off the beaten path. Here's how you might be able to help me if you're interested. And here are my deficiencies and the things I'm excited about. And so I think being more honest about who you are and what you're doing when you do try to remove that blindfold of the world is looking at me, what am I supposed to be doing? It's important to sort of keep reorienting that feeling in your head over time. It's a really good question to start with, though. It's a huge topic.
I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I see that it becomes a burden at some point where people get sucked into this hole of what are the expectations of me rather than what are my expectations for myself, and are they and sometimes you used two beautiful words, vulnerability and authenticity.
Yeah.
We at that point, one becomes very scared and nervous of being vulnerable. You can't even come out with your weakness because you get so used to the world watching you, and you feel like you can't let them down.
100%. And I think what's really interesting that I've been learning is that the fear of the eyes and it's not the fear of the eyes, right? It's the fear of what you think the societal retribution will be if you fail. And the farther you step away from conventional success or sort of the interim steps that make your LinkedIn look good or make your resume look good, the more you feel like you have chances to fail. But ironically, it's in failure that we have the most growth, right? And so in a way, our prior definitions of chasing success are actually the things that hold us back from being successful. Because if you are operating off of someone else's playbook, if you are playing someone else's game that isn't yours, you're never going to actually tap into your unique potential because you're not even trying to figure out what that unique potential is. Or maybe you do, which is super hard to even figure out, and then say that you are lucky enough to be on the path to figuring it out. You're not actually tapping into it because you're afraid of the what if it didn't work out, or what if you took a risk that made other people think differently of you. But in reality, you'll never win at someone else's game, right? That's why we're all so different.
So write your own playbook.
Yeah.
Write your own rules. and that's good enough. If you set your own set of rules and make your every endeavor towards living it by your own standards, because you can never probably live up to other people's.
Exactly.
And why should you?
Yeah, exactly. And
Right.
I think the more like really successful people you look at, you realize that they completely, there's two decisions, right? One, you have to decide, what is the game that I am playing?
Mm-hmm.
And how is it different than the games that other people around me are playing?
Mm-hmm.
And then what are the rules of those games so that I can win my personal game? And those are very distinct sort of analysis, reflection, decision points. And the follow through is you have to wake up every day and continue to follow through, because there's a gravitational pull of wanting to do what everyone else is doing. But the most successful people wake up every morning and remind themselves of what their centers of gravity are and what defines those centers of gravity for them differently than from their neighbor or their best friends.
And you made a very, very solid point about learning from your failures, because there's actually a quote that I've given to my students,
Yeah.
which is, success makes you stronger,
Yeah.
but failure makes you smarter.
Oh my goodness.
Because you've got to take the plunge. You've got to allow yourselves to make mistakes and come out stronger and smarter, because
Yeah.
it's an experience. And you know, in my classes I often make the graph of the EKG report, which has all these lines running up and down. Such is life, isn't it? That is our graph of life. Then
Yeah.
why are we so scared? So we have to have that tenacity and that resoluteness to be able to embrace a failure
100%.
and yet take chances.
Yeah.
One failure does not define who you are.
Absolutely.
Have the courage to go through several failures,
Yeah.
because you know, growing up in India, the Indians are fascinated with gold.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of the best investments also. But I learned as a child that to make gold shine like it is,
Yeah.
it goes through fire.
Oh my goodness.
It
true.
goes through fire and
that's a
it
great
comes out
analogy.
shining. So if I want to shine, I will have to go through some bit of fire somewhere. And if not, then if I don't go through any fire in my life and it's just smooth sailing, I will never be appreciative of what I have.
Yeah, that's very true.
But it's amazing. Whatever you're saying is music to my ears. I'm loving it, because I think a lot of people will benefit from it. And by the way, a disclaimer that I know the sun is shifting and moving places. It was on your face at one point. It's not that I purposely put her in under the sunlight. We discussed it and she was okay with it. That's the positioning.
That's the position.
That's the position.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
no,
tell
I
me.
really liked the analogy you made about gold, because I think the other side of that analogy is you don't know how strong you are. You don't know what you're capable of withstanding until you are put through the fire as well.
And you know, the purest form of gold, the 24 karat
Yeah.
gold. We're stuck with gold
Or
now.
gold, yeah.
So the purest form of gold is not usable.
Okay.
It has to have a catalyst. It has to either be mixed with silver or copper to make an ornament.
Interesting.
So even the purest form of gold needs a little help.
100%. Yeah, and that's actually a really good point too, in terms of, okay, what if you decide you want to play your own game, and what if you decide you're okay with failure? The actual doing of it is so difficult that you need a community. I think who you surround yourself with is so important. So
Yeah.
if you surround yourself with people who are only following one certain path of life, and that might be the right path for them, but you want something different, if those are the only people you're spending time with and the only people you're listening to advice from, it's going to feel very wrong in your head to step away from that. So how can you consciously surround yourself with people who, you know, if you want to be an entrepreneur, are you surrounding yourself with other entrepreneurs? If you want to be an investor, are you surrounding yourself with other investors in the same realm, industry, service sector, whatever that is? If you want to be like a mom, are you surrounding yourself by other mothers? Or if you don't want to be a mother, you want to be a working woman, without kids, and are you, like, you have to sort of make sure that your community reflects your values and your specific concerns, because that is how you create that new gravitational force. It can't just be, it's really hard to have it solely within yourself. I found it with myself a lot. I was very much siloed in very specific orgs for a lot of my career. And the more I kept pushing one step out of it, creating new networks, creating new relationships that were maybe I felt like I was being given permission in so many ways to make decisions that felt so terrifying to me, but it was a way of de-risking, right? Because you create that support, you create the silver, like that safety net of voices that are telling you, oh, that wasn't actually a failure, that was a growing pain. There was a point to that, and it was, we're proud of you for doing that, as opposed to, what are you doing? You're crazy.
So I think permission to yourself
First.
We are the ones who put restrictions on ourselves, I think, as human beings. And to your point, what a beautifully, you elaborated really nicely. So basically, life is not one size fits all. Life is not one size fits all.
It'd be boring if it was.
Nothing is one size fits all. Generations of the same DNA are different from each other.
Yeah.
So if blood is not copying the same personality, it'll give you traits, yes. So when you look around yourself and you seek inspiration from people, you look up, you surround yourself, you create that herd that you want to be a part of, or a group, your little world that you create, your orbit. Don't be intimidated. Make sure that you're inspired by that that herd around you.
Yeah.
So now you've been through schooling, elementary, middle, high school, college, and now masters. Now I work with a lot of young children also, besides professionals, and I've seen that going through that hump, sometimes the transition from actually even third grade onwards. Sometimes it becomes very difficult for the children. They are struggling to transition from second to third grade, from fifth to sixth, and
hard.
from eighth to high school. So talk about your experiences. How was that for you? I mean, it keeps changing with every year with the new generation, but how was your experience?
I think that's so interesting to reflect on, because to your point, that never ends. Like, it's the hardest when you're a kid because you're experiencing change for the first time, and it's really interesting how difficult change continues to be, no matter how many times we do it. Still, like, I just graduated, my whole life is changing again, and it is still terrifying, and it is still unsettling, and it is still scary, and I'm grappling with probably a lot of the same emotions I did at age 7 and age 10 and age 14 and so on. I think it's extra hard as a kid, though, because you're not consciously choosing to make those jumps. You're sort of following a formula. Versus, I think, in adulthood, you are usually, not always, but usually making a choice to leave a career to go to school. And so on, and you have more agency over what your next step will be. But I really do think that it never really gets easier. So I guess just the thing that I've learned the most is that whole conversation we were just having on failure and risk and tolerance and like self-kindness, self-empathy. The first 6 months of anything new, just give yourself permission to be a complete mess. Don't just take a lot of notes. Ask a lot of questions, be really curious, put absolutely no pressure on yourself to understand anything, like let alone the classes or your teacher's personalities or your classmates' personalities or the culture of this new system. Just like for 6 months, tell yourself that there is nothing I can do that is possibly wrong, because there is nothing expected of me in this new period. And that's the gift I'm giving myself for taking on a new challenge, which is third grade or sixth grade or whatever that is.
So talking about give yourself a gift, I know that you journal. You like to journal. When did you start journaling, and how has it helped you?
Ooh, I think to a certain degree, I've always kept track, even when I was probably in third grade. I don't think I did it like consciously or I don't think I did it consistently. I think I really started being consistent about it when I was graduating college. I think when I was 1 year out of college, I was in my first job. And I think what was different about that period of time is when we're younger, there's a lot more unstructured time to think. Actually, I take that back, because I feel like this new generation is so overscheduled with 15 activities and different things. But at least I felt like I had a lot more unstructured time to just sit with my thoughts and have them percolate. I think when I was working, that was the first time where my 12 to 15 hours a day were controlled by somebody else. And there was no room for independent, solitary thought whatsoever. So in order to give myself, again, a gift, I guess, in order to give myself a gift of being able to process what was happening around me, I needed a forcing mechanism. And for me, that was setting aside time to journal. And it's been something that was probably 2018. So for 6 years now, I have a huge stack of them. But it was really big in business school as well. And especially writing down what are my sources of gravity, what are the gifts of kindness I'm giving myself. When you write those down and you formalize them in like almost a contract to yourself, you force yourself to then uphold those, because it's not a fleeting thought anymore. It's literally a written thought.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Do you journal or have a form of reflection that you like to do? I know you do a lot of yoga.
I do yoga. That has really helped me. But my music,
yeah, that's true.
It's what anchors me, because I genuinely and just very, very seamlessly gravitate to a certain kind of music.
Yeah.
That soothes my soul.
Totally.
And that's what anchors me in many ways, and that speaks to me.
Yeah.
I learned from the music that I get drawn towards, and I'm a believer in the divine spirit and divine plan, without getting into the religious aspect, because I'm just a very spiritual person, not so much religious. But I believe that if a certain song is buzzing in my head, the universe is sending that tune in my head for a reason. And that's why I'm getting drawn, that just out of the blue, a certain melody is coming back to me.
That's true.
Why? So that's very fascinating, and I just love it. I embrace it. I do not question it. So a very, very thoughtful and insightful conversation so far. But looking back at your life, if there was one thing that, was there any moment in life where you felt that, oh, the parents just don't get it?
Am I allowed to answer that question?
Candidly,
oh, man.
Candidly.
No, I think I've been very lucky, and I'm not just saying this, where I grew up in an environment where it was much more about questions were allowed. I think I grew up in a society where it felt like, oh, society doesn't get it, more so than in the household, if that makes sense. It was more so that there feels to be a yellow brick road push that all children are supposed to go towards. And this is it's not about the parents or about one specific person, but the way to make all of the stakeholders in your life happy, whether or not they've said it out loud to you, is to follow one specific yellow brick road of go to the best college and then get the highest paying job in 2 prestigious fields, and then make sure it's the top 3 companies of that field, and iterate through like your income building and so on. And then of course the MBA was also get into the most prestigious school. I was very lucky by that point. I think I had a lot of conversations with my parents to take that societal burden away from me. So truly, when I got into business school, I was lucky that it was a good brand name, but it was not at all something that my self-worth no longer rested on that decision, if that makes sense. But I do think it's a broader generational issue and not necessarily a household issue, even if you can solve it within the household. There are just too many external factors. You can go onto LinkedIn and compare yourself to a million people's resumes in an instant and run through all the simulations of how you should be running your career or how you should have run your career. You have social media where you can compare yourself on the day-to-day of what people are doing. It's just really hard, I think, even for parents to control the narrative of their own homes, because there's so many inputs from so many different directions. What your school system is teaching the kids, and it's just really hard to consciously build an environment where unfettered risk taking, but still in a health, like it's a balance too, right? It is really promoted.
True, very true. So you went through a very highly placed school district, public school system in New Jersey. Then you went to Stern School of Business, which is also very demanding and aggressive. And then you traveled. You were away for a whole year in London, in the London campus, and then you were away all the way to Shanghai. And then you went to HBS, which is, you just keep adding feathers in your cap. So
I'm done with the feathers. No more feathers.
Now just spread them and dance, I guess, like the peacock does.
Yeah.
Like the peacock does. You've acquired plenty of feathers. Open them up and dance.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. But in all these three, as far as in terms of education, in these 3 units that you've been to, the school system, because you were in one steady school system throughout K through 12, then Stern School of Business, and then Harvard Business School, which has had the most impact on you, good or bad? Hopefully good, but
I don't know if I can answer that. I think I'm way too close to having graduated from HBS that I don't quite know how profoundly it has or hasn't changed me. I think alums always say that you will be discovering ways in which it's changed you for decades, just from the community alone, the people that you're meeting, and then also the ways in which you've grown and changed during the program. So I guess I would probably have to say my time at NYU Stern, most notably because of how long I was abroad. Because it was 2 things. One, I went to China in 2016, so this was still during the Obama presidency. It was early innings of China being a rival power to the US, but in many ways it was still this place is so foreign to us that what they think is up, we think is down. What they think is normal, they think is weird, and vice versa. And, just be wary of this counterculture almost. And it was true. When I got there were so many different norms and behaviors and parts of normal day-to-day culture that I was just like, what is happening here? And you have a temptation to think that what we do is right and what they do is wrong, because that's how you've been taught, especially, growing up in the same school district, in the same place. And so I think having the lid blown off of my perception of reality was so formative, and getting to do that in 3 of the largest financial centers in the world, in New York, London, and then Shanghai, it really puts into perspective the European way of living, the Chinese way of living, and the United States American way of living, but also what historical context created these 3 separate and distinct cultures. And it has allowed me to have a lot more empathy in the way that I deal with people, even within the United States. It doesn't even mean people of other cultures, just people from different backgrounds. It's given me a lot more patience with differences. It has given me a lot more appreciation for what used to probably make me uncomfortable. And so I think undergrad for that reason. And I think the second piece is not just how different it was, but also being away from everyone and everything you've known. For
the first time.
Yeah. Versus now, I'm used to it. I'm going in a small community. Yeah.
All right. It's been such a wonderful conversation that I think I'm losing track of time a little bit, and I just realized that we are way beyond 20 minutes. I was hoping to do it 15 to 20 minutes.
Oh, shoot.
But it's very easy to get carried away, and that's a testament to a good conversation where time just flies by. So I really have to thank you for your time and your input. I think this conversation would be of use and value to the audience, hopefully. But before we say goodbye, is there a parting advice that you'd like to offer to anybody who's watching?
Yeah, I think this is very particular to the late 20s, end of my 20s period of life that I'm in. But something I've been thinking about a lot is we spend so much of our lives trying to discover and process the external. Travel to a new place, discover new parts of space, learn as much as we can about everything around us, meet every new person in this pursuit of finding something. And what I'm realizing more and more is that all of these external ways of processing reality are actually just ways for us to discover the internal. There's, as big as the universe is outside, the universe within ourselves is just as deep and as complex and as complicated. And that's going back to the 2 points we talked about earlier, that authenticity and that vulnerability and showing up as yourself, you also have to employ within your own self. Like, am I being vulnerable with myself, being honest with myself, being curious about who I am and how I'm different from others, and not just trying to be the same as others, And in that constant pursuit of not just discovering the world, but also discovering that inner life and that inner self and that inner uniqueness and strength and weakness and authenticity.
You said it beautifully, and I have a poster on my wall which says, "Embrace your uniqueness."
Yeah.
Y-O-U. Y-O-U,
I love
uniqueness, and others will too. So, Shivangi, thank you so much. I love you so much.
I love you too.
Time for the reveal, and the reveal is this one's mine. I love her so much. She's made me very proud, and I continue to learn a lot of things from her because she is my baby. I had the honor and privilege to get to know her even 9 months before she found herself.
Oh my goodness.
So I thank you for all the lessons that you give us.
Thank you.
And
Thank you for
raising us.
Oh my goodness. And she asked me a question about parenting. That was so unfair.
I had to put you on the spot. So thank you for tuning into OATS Uncut. We are unedited, unscripted, unfiltered, and uncut. This is Orator Academy Talks. Stay tuned for more exciting, beautiful, insightful conversations like this. And take care of yourself. Ciao for now.